Has this line quickly become one of the best releases in all of bourbon? Today we're doing a review of Larceny Barrel Proof Batch C922. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, today we're taking a look at Larceny Barrel Proof Batch C922. So if you're not aware, this is a regular 3 times a year release from Heaven Hill Distillery. Just like the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, which is sort of its brother series, Larceny Barrel Proof, released 3 times a year. This is the 3rd and final batch for 2022, the C batch. Now, perhaps the most interesting thing to say here is that Larceny Barrel Proof has had a sort of up and down history so far, compared to, like I mentioned, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof releases, which are consistently pretty great. You might get some that are just phenomenal, but it's always at least meeting some pretty great standard. Larceny Barrel Proof, there's been some ones that have ruffled some feathers, let's just say. Some people who thought that certain batches of this just were plain not good. But recently, in the last 4 or 5 releases, it really seems like Larceny Barrel Proof is firing on all cylinders. And from what I've heard about this batch and what I've had a little bit of taste of so far, this is no exception. Let's take a look at the stats on this bottle just to give you a sense of that. So first and foremost, proof on this one is 126.6 proof. That is, I believe, the highest in Larceny Barrel Proof history. So pretty decently high, especially for like a wheated bourbon. It is a wheated bourbon, so the mash bill on this is 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. So this is a great option if you're looking for something wheated but still really powerful and punchy. At least that's what I've found with Larceny Barrel Proofs so far. Price on this bottle is where you really start to talk about some great value. So these releases are now $60 MSRP. They used to be $50. They bumped it up about $10, which isn't too bad. Though, to be honest with you, if you do see these Larceny Barrel Proofs, they might be somewhere in that 60 to 80 range. I actually paid closer to 80 for this bottle, but hey, I found that they're really, really good, and I'm willing to pay $80 for those better batches of Larceny Barrel Proof. So with all that being said, let's dive into the nose, palate, and finish and evaluate this C922 batch and see if Larceny can kind of just keep up this trend of elevating its game. Just before we dive in, we've crossed 1,000 subscribers, and I am so thrilled and so thankful for all your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider hitting that big red button. While you're at it, like the video, helps get it out to more people and continues to grow the community. All right, everybody, let's get into the nose, palate, and finish on this bourbon. First, just the color. Very nice, very solid, sort of slightly darker amber note to it. All right, nose here. Ooh, it's so sweet. It's like very caramel forward. Lots of vanilla and caramel coming through. There's like a lighter brown sugar going on for me. And then the biggest note I'm getting, and the thing that really comes to mind, is like a cinnamon red hot candy. There's a good amount of cinnamon, there's a good amount of burn. I wouldn't call it straight up ethanol, but there is a simmering heat here. And then little notes of like maple syrup, a darker, richer thing poking through, so somewhat bright and fiery on the front, but underneath that you get some deeper, darker tones, which I think will come out a little bit more as it opens up. But that's enough about the nose for now. Let's get into the palate and have our first sip here. Cheers, everybody. Okay, it's quite the experience. It is powerful. It is also spicy, in your face with some heat, that's for sure. Let me walk you through what I got there though. So front palate there was much brighter and sweeter, so like a vanilla, honey, caramel kind of note. Mid palate, man, this is where things change and some of that darker richness from the nose starts to really come through. It was almost just like French toast dipped in maple syrup. Very rich and sugary. There's a good amount of like oak and barrel presence to it too, so there's some heft there in the middle. And then the back end for me, as it transitioned into the finish, it got that cinnamon red hot candy note all over it and sort of melded with that French toast. So it sort of handed it off, like handing off a baton. The French toast lingered a little bit while that cinnamon was coming up, and then on the finish for me now, it's just kind of like caramel and that red hot cinnamon. Really nice, really, really powerful. Let's go in for a second sip, see if we can pick out some more flavors. Now that my palate's acclimated to this 126 proof, we should be able to pick out some more complexity here. So cheers. All right, so a couple new layers there that developed for me. First, just a little bit of cherry, like a bright red cherry on the front palate. So again, that's very like sweet and bright. Then it really deepens out and gets this roastier, toastier, cinnamon, brown sugar, maple syrup, French toast, pancakes kind of note to it in the middle. Then it transitions to that spicy cinnamon and red hot kind of candy. And then actually just a little bit of a drying leather effect on the very back end for me now. So slightly showing some age, but also drying out my palate just a bit. And there might even be a bit of nuttiness that comes along with that leather at the end. So something like a peanut or a hazelnut coming through for me, which is not at all to be unexpected from, you know, a Heaven Hill product, certainly looking for a little bit of nuttiness in it, and I can get that, especially on the back end of this, which is nice. But again, very sweet up front, deeper and richer in the middle, and then spicy and sort of fiery toward the end, which actually, like, the fieriness, the spiciness of it is not unpleasant, it's just very cinnamon forward. All right, so we talked a little bit about the finish, but let's just have a third sip now and fully evaluate that. Cheers, everybody. Yeah, so one new note there, just a little bit of like a roasted almond, or maybe it's nutmeg or something like that. So the spice has gotten a little bit more complex for me, but that certainly hit me toward the back end. That finish though, quite long. Part of the great thing with 126 proof, very powerful spicy whiskey is, and this is gonna linger on the palate for a considerable amount of time. I do think a little bit of that like barrel char, maple syrup, French toast stuff sticks around a little bit, but it does get very spicy, a lot of heat on the back end of the palate for me, which is surprising. It's not hot up front, it's sort of blooms with its heat, and that finish sticks around for a while. But if you're not into cinnamon red hot candy and stuff like that, that gives that lingering spice, that's really what sticks around the most on the finish for me. Again, a touch of that like drying leather, but overall, it's that cinnamon spice that sticks around for me. So that lingers for a while, but if that's not your thing, just know that this one's gonna stick on your palate for a while with that presence. All right, so we've gone through the full process now with Larceny Barrel Proof Batch C922. My final thoughts on it here are just that it's a super powerful whiskey. It is very spicy, especially for a wheated profile, but man, is this another hitter in my opinion from Larceny Barrel Proof and Heaven Hill. I am really glad they have sort of found the recipe for success with this line of whiskeys. I know that it was hit or miss to start, but now Larceny Barrel Proof really seems to be hitting its stride. I will caveat that with this bottle saying, if you're looking for a softer wheated profile and expecting this out of that bottle, no, it's gonna be punch you in the face kind of bourbon, and that's not for everybody. But man, if you're looking for something powerful and flavorful, Larceny Barrel Proof C922, it's gonna give you that for sure. So those are my full thoughts on Larceny Barrel Proof C922. Let me know in the comments below if you've been able to get your hands on this bottle and taste it. If you've had the other Larcenys from this year, let me know which one you think is best. I only have the B522, so we'll compare these. This is probably gonna go in my Whiskey of the Year video because it's that good. So let me know if you've been able to compare and what came out on top for you. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.